Περνώ τον λόγο στον Τάσο το Γιαννίτση. Αυτός είχε το δυσάρεστο προνόμιο, αντί να έχει mail, να έχει ένα νόμο ή ένα νομοσχέδιο με το όνομά του.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ. Ούτε νόμος υπήρχε, ούτε νομοσχέδιο, αγαπητέ Αντώνη. Εν πάση περιπτώσει. First, I would like to thank Mr. Tsomokos for this invitation and for the honor to can be here and to discuss on the debt and the growth implications of the debt in Greece. Obviously, everybody is knowing that there is a theoretical question about the debt growth link. And there are more concrete empirical or concrete policy questions with regard to Greece. So, and the topic I would like to discuss here is not a theoretical issue, which has been extensively analyzed in the scientific literature, but the particular debt growth link faced by Greece in this current juncture. Debt overhang in Greece was caused by an array of factors, among which I would like to underline the following. First, the weakness to generate growth even before the crisis, and in particular during the crisis years, and the absence of policies to enhance and transform the productive base of the country. Second, the significant macroeconomic asymmetries between the members of the Eurozone itself and the lax lending practices of European banks. Third, the extremely short period of fiscal consolidation leading to a particularly deep and lasting recession in Greece. Fourth, the asymmetrical emphasis on a revenue-led fiscal adjustment in Greece based on excessive tax increases but failing to catch tax evasion, tax avoidance, or to remove tax privileges. As a result, the Greek economy is facing severe constraints, such as, first, the collapse of trust of both national and foreign players to the banking system, to the Greek banking system and the state, which cut off Greece from the capital markets with severe implications for liquidity, the cost of capital and growth. To give a practical example, the increase of interest rates because of this cut-off from the markets more than counterbalanced the positive effect of wage restrictions on competitiveness. Second constraint, the high debt to GDP ratio and the country's performance are significant long-term determinants of country risk, the country risk of Greece. And consequently, besides affecting the country's access to capital markets, are a significant constraint for new foreign direct investment or for financing new investment projects domestically. Thirdly, the decrease of public investment, which took place between 2009 and 2014, which was 45%. And this decrease is associated to the broader fall of the investment to GDP rate from 23.5% in the early 2000s to 13.5% in the recent years, so a fall of 10 percentage points of GDP. In my presentation, I will not discuss the well-known question whether the Greek debt is sustainable or the assumptions of IMF and other organizations on the question of the debt sustainability or whether a debt write-off has to be agreed with the creditors and on which conditions. In my view, the approach of the Troika and Europe on the Greek debt was a typical example of a severe mismanagement. The suggestions to prolong maturities and lower interest rates and to look at net present values could facilitate the servicing of the debt, but would also prolong the restrictive impact of debt servicing on growth and certainly would not remove some of the significant negative effects of the debt which I have mentioned before. Instead of debating these issues, I would like to focus on 5 aspects of the debt growth nexus, which widen the view on the issue, are rarely invoked, but play a key role in assessing the perspectives of the Greek economy. So, my first point concerns the causality between debt and growth, which runs, in my view, in both directions. The debt sustainability of a country depends highly not only on the stock and other characteristics of its debt, but also on the capability of its society and institutions to generate growth. This means that the cause-effect relationship between debt and growth can be reversed. Too slow growth can imperil future growth by causing an excessive accumulation of debt. In such a case, debt overhang is the outcome and not the cause of weak growth, and my position is that the disregard of efficient growth policy and the weak production base of Greece pushed governments to boost growth through increasingly additional financial resources and external debt. During the crisis also, we saw that the deep recession of the Greek economy became the cause of additional debt, which on its turn affected further the growth prospects. Second point, growth policy in Greece was based mostly on expansionary fiscal policy and the credit bubble sustained by the lending banks. In fact, since more than 2 decades before the present crisis, each additional unit of GDP in Greece was associated with an even higher unit of debt, which in the last 2 decades exceeded GDP growth and achieved values between 110 and 163%. In the years 2003 to 2009, the high dependence of growth on additional lending proved to be a factor leading to debt overhang in either way. In times of positive growth rates, even higher debt growth led to higher debt to GDP rates, and in times of crisis, the restrictions on additional debt led to a collapse of GDP with a similar outcome. Third point, the emphasis on the debt overhang points out a deadlock, the answer to which is expected to be given by the creditors. In contrast, the emphasis on growth points out the question of national capabilities and policies. The point of reference of the 2 approaches is very different. The first is reflecting the delusion of an uninterrupted lending and is looking for external support, while the second one is calling for policy efficiency in designing and implementing a strategy to exit the crisis and return to positive growth rates. I am insisting on the importance of growth because behind debt overhang and the crisis, one can find the weak and inefficient governance structures of Greece, and particularly the lack of capabilities to put priorities and to implement growth policies based on the significant drivers of growth in the actual world, such as quality of production, innovation, participation in global value chains, upgrading of traditional products and services, R&D, and foremost quality of governance, attack on corruption, efficient state structures, and establishing a stable and friendly environment for investment and productive activities, which means a fair play between state and the private economy. As long as growth policy disregards the necessary transformations which have to be implemented, additional debt will statistically continue to be negatively associated to growth. In short, Greece is faced with a policy management challenge, and the capacity to address this challenge will be decisive for its future evolution. Fourth point, the success of fiscal consolidation depends on 2 complementary factors: the reduction of fiscal deficits and the enhancement of growth. We come again on growth. Failing to achieve one of these 2 targets impacts the success of the consolidation process itself. Despite this crucial interconnection, the efforts were given on reducing fiscal deficits. Growth was expected to be an automatic residuum of the consolidation process itself. However, this expectation was not achieved in any year. The result was that fiscal consolidation in cyclically adjustment terms, not just nominal fiscal consolidation, during 2010 to 2014 exceeded nominal consolidation by about 4.5 percentage points of GDP. It was 16.2% instead of 11.8%, indicating a huge additional fiscal adjustment Greece had to make because of the recession.
Με ακόμη πιο σουρεαλιστικό τρόπο το ρολόι έχει πει τα δικά του.
Ναι, το είδα. Με πιο σουρεαλιστικό τρόπο ακόμα. So, fifth point, as I mentioned, the prevailing concept of growth was the Keynesian concept of expansionary fiscal policy. It failed. The prevailing concept of the Troika to deal with the crisis was to cut wages and incomes, to impose not just a front-loaded fiscal consolidation, but a big bang episode, and to eliminate basic institutional rules of the labor market. It failed too. Failure needs to be measured and judged not only by the economic results. These failures had additional far-reaching consequences for the social and political stability of the country, which on their turn affect other economic variables. Sixth, I think that the debt question should lead to a strong negotiation with the creditors for boosting investment and the productive base of the economy. The efficiency of such a program would largely depend on Greece's large reforms, in particular in the areas of taxation, judiciary, and state corruption. After more than 7 years in crisis, it's time to think smartly and pragmatically. After all these years in crisis, the issue of debt overhang should be seen as part of a broader policy challenge. And we need to answer, frankly, all related questions. To finish my points, and having heard so many colleagues here, speakers yesterday, who went and tried to find Pythia to obtain her mind, I also yesterday afternoon went myself there, and in fact I found her, and I was very astonished. I explained to her that I'm very astonished because everybody else who tried to find her could not find her and gave some hypothetical answers, etc. And she told me, look, don't believe anybody. All these people, they pretend to have been in Castalia and having asked for advice, but they have said that simply as a joke in their speeches. You are the only guy who to have been really interested, for my view, and I will give you a straight answer, or better, 2 straight answers. First, look at your history, at our history. We have the examples of the imprudent Icarus, but we have also the example of the ingenious Ulysses. Not Ulysses Kyriakopoulos here, but the Ulysses of Homer. So, you can make your choice and then act. And if you are not happy with this, look what Darwin said. Darwin said that it's not the strongest of the species, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one most adaptable to change. Thank you.